We haven't been this divided since the Civil War. People are arguing over a stolen election, vaccine mandates, border control, government overreach, and climate change. We are losing our freedoms. Inflation is surging, interest rates are rising, debt is growing unsustainably. Food supply shortages, energy crises, ESG is taking hold in corporate America. Talks of secession and civil war increase every month. How did we get here? These are the strategies and tipping points that orphaned us from our country, reinterpreting the Constitution. The founding fathers gave the ultimate power in the nation not to any king or aristocracy, not even to a democracy, but to a document, the United States Constitution. Power was then granted from the Constitution to the three branches of government: legislative, executive, and judicial. From there, power was also divided among the national, state, and local governments. In this way, no one was given excessive power. The separation of powers included checks and balances, because as you know, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Unfortunately, these principles have been abandoned. The root of the problem in our culture is a reinterpretation and rejection of the Constitution. As we've seen, leftists from Theodore Roosevelt to Woodrow Wilson paved the way to dismantle that power. Wilson referred to the Constitution as a living document, first in 1912. That means it can change. Beginning with Franklin Roosevelt's New Deal and Woodrow Wilson's progressive ideology, leftists viewed the Constitution as an antiquated document written for a different time and culture, unfit to direct and navigate the country to a better future. There is a huge disparity in the way conservatives and leftists understand the Constitution, and this is the beginning point for understanding our differences. Conservatives gain the title originalists, meaning we hold that the Constitution is a concrete, unchanging document. The Constitution is a brilliant article of principles that are broad enough to be lasting, but specific enough to protect rights. Cell phones didn't exist at the founding of our country, but our rights are still protected under the Fourth Amendment through the principles therein. Our phones cannot be searched or seized without consent, a warrant, or probable cause to believe a crime has been committed. If leftists can redefine, challenge, and show that the Constitution is obsolete and insufficient to arrive at fair and just laws, then the power of the Constitution and founding documents can be sidestepped or reinterpreted. Whoever can sidestep the authority of the Constitution, or whoever does the reinterpretation, ends up having the power, and that is the real goal. Emergency powers. This reinterpretation of the Constitution has led to an abuse of rights such as emergency powers, which can be and have been used to subvert the checks and balances of constitutional authority and separation of powers as laid out in our Constitution. Emergency powers grant one individual, the president or governor, the authority to suspend standing statutes and even create new laws circumventing the legislative process. In FDR's inaugural address of 1932, he asked Congress for broad executive power to wage war against the emergency as great as the power that would be given me if we were in fact invaded by a foreign foe. His enemy? The Great Depression, a monster created by the Federal Reserve. Once he attained limited emergency powers to fight poverty, FDR gave the Federal Reserve more authority, less oversight, and increased their independence from our government. When you hear about executive powers, think Emperor Palpatine from Star Wars.
Misa propose that the Senate give immediately emergency powers to the Supreme Chancellor.
It is with great reluctance that I have agreed to this calling.
Or perhaps something more recent, Gavin Newsom's reign of terror on the state of California in 2020. Once he got a taste of rule by executive order, his appetite only grew for one-person rule to further the Democratic agenda and policies enacting laws unrelated to the pandemic. Now that the pandemic has been declared over by President Biden, how will he and his governors maintain emergency powers? I know, and you do too. You've already seen it. declare a state of emergency over climate change.
How dare you!
I declare bankruptcy!
If you have interest, it's rewarding to learn when and how emergency powers have been used by our presidents throughout the years, as well as what the National Emergency Powers Act entails. While government has been the principal beneficiary of national emergency, the principal casualty has been liberty. As Madison warned, crisis is the rallying cry of the tyrant. To Congress, a crisis is an excuse to expand its domain. Said another way, never let a crisis go to waste. Supreme Court overreach. The Supreme Court has also developed a taste for power, usurping to itself authority that the Constitution never intended it to have. Instead of interpreting the Constitution and evaluating the laws set by Congress, the Supreme Court has awarded itself the authority to make laws based upon their own understanding of justice.
I think that pretty much sums it up. I found it at Spencer Gifts.
One reason for this unbalanced and unchecked societal structure is the interpretive methods for understanding the Constitution itself.
All right, well, it seems pretty simple. Your first line is, my name is Claude, so just repeat after me. Je m'appelle Claude.
Je découpe plow.
Progressives understand the Constitution as a living document, changing and malleable, adapting to the culture it created and finding itself in. Conservatives see it as concrete, unchanging, to be interpreted as originally intended. The Constitution is difficult to change. Amendments may be proposed either by the Congress through a joint resolution passed by a 2/3 vote, or by a convention called by Congress in response to applications from 2/3 of the state legislatures. Congress is made up of 535 voting members, 100 senators, and 435 representatives. Congress is usually divided pretty evenly between Democrats and Republicans. If you can imagine, getting both parties to agree to a resolution to change something as important as the Constitution is very rare. Out of the 11,000 amendments proposed since the first one in 1789, only 27 have passed the 2/3 vote requirement. Because laws enacted by Congress require a lot of red tape, agreement, and acquiescence to ideals proposed to either political ideology, emergency powers have been employed to sidestep that process and create new laws by one singular person. Because the Constitution is difficult to change, Supreme Court appointments have been harnessed to further political ideologies where the justices do not interpret what Congress has voted into law, but instead enforce their own ideas of justice.
Can you provide a definition for the word woman?
Can I provide a definition? No,
Yeah.
I can't.
You can't?
Not in this context.
So
I'm not a
the
biologist.
meaning of the word woman is so unclear and controversial that you can't give me a definition?
Senator, in my work as a judge, what I do is I address disputes. If there's a dispute about a definition, people make arguments, and I look at the law and I decide. So I'm not...
The fact that you can't give me a straight answer about something as fundamental as what a woman is underscores the dangers of the kind of progressive education that we are hearing about.
Both emergency powers and Supreme Court powers have usurped the process enacting laws that the people have not voted on and Congress has not approved of. All that is to say, you are not being ruled by the consent of the governed. The administrative state today is unconstrained by law or constitutionalism and seeks to subjugate the people it was meant to serve. In all of my research, understanding the enemy and methods used to betray our homeland and make us strangers, I had to know more about what motivated it. Why did they do the things they did? I discovered what it was and want to share my findings with you, so I'll see you over there to find out why Democrats are the way they are.